Welcome to Femme and Furious, a podcast where pop culture meets a feminine framing. I am your host, Julia Portela, and today we are jet-setting through the pages of one of my favorite books, The People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. But before we dive into today's episode, let me tell you how you can follow the pod. You can follow on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. We are available on all major podcasting networks. You can also watch a full video breakdown with all of my crazy hand gestures on Spotify or on YouTube. You can follow the pod on Instagram at FemandFuriousPod. You can send me an email over on femandfuriouspod@gmail.com. And last but not least, you can join the Patreon. It is $10 a month. The Two Femme, Two Furious Patreon gives you Femme and Furious fully loaded bonus episodes. It gives you a 15% discount on merch and live events, Sunday Brunch, which is a virtual monthly hangout. It gives you Suffragette Award, which is voting privileges for bonus content, episode topics, and more. And it gives you Tea Time, which is an online chat, and Fast Five, which is a weekly content roundup. All right, let's take a chic peek at today's episode, which is The People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. This is your blanket spoiler warning for the rest of the episode. We will be talking about all of the beautiful, intricate, amazing details that happen in the pages of this book. One of my favorite books, I think, perhaps my favorite of Emily Henry's so far. Here's the synopsis. Two best friends, 10 summers, one chance to fall in love. Poppy is a wild, free-spirited travel writer, and Alex is her buttoned-up, bookish opposite. They've been vacationing together every summer for a decade until 2 years ago when something happened, and it ruined their friendship. Now, in a last-ditch effort to fix what is broken, Poppy convinces Alex to take one last trip. Cue all of the awkward tension, laugh-out-loud moments, and the slowest of slow burns as we navigate the line of friendship and something so much more. Also in our chic peek, important to mention that this is releasing as the first of a series of Emily Henry movie adaptations. Originally, it was supposed to be a TV show, which I actually think probably would have fared better based off of the structure of this book, so we will see. But that movie is anticipated to release sometime this summer, so I will probably be back talking about this all over again in a few weeks. When the movie drops, I'm really excited for it. I'm really excited to reread the book also ahead of the movie, even though I just read it. This is one of those books that just sucks you in, and I am really happy that it's getting adapted, and I'm really praying the adaptation is good and that Emily Henry, brilliant as she ever is, really had her hands in it. So we shall see. The movie stars Tom Blythe, which if you remember from just a few years ago, he is hot President Snow from the Hunger Games in one of the sequels that they did around the first ever Hunger Games, right? And then Emily Bader, who is of My Lady Jane fame. So the two of them will be playing Alex and Poppy. I don't know that I pictured Tom Blythe, hot as he ever is, to be Alex Nilsson, but I am keeping my mind open because Alex is hot, he's buff and stuff like that. I don't know. I pictured Alex to be much more boyishly good looking, and I guess Tom Blythe is. I don't know. Tom Blythe to me is an untouchable type of hot. It's not you meet that person on the street and you're like, I could date them. Pedro Pascal is the type of person that you meet on the street and you're like, I could date them. And that's not to take away from anyone's hotness. There's just different levels of hotness, okay? You guys know what I'm talking about. Hotness ranking is for the girls. We'll do an episode like this one day, I promise. So that is coming out later this summer. All right. Also in our chic peek, let's go over all of the things that our bookish baddies need to know. Genre, romantic comedy. Judging the cover. Poppy and Alex on lawn chairs with Alex with a book in his hand. The new covers, by the way, are like absolutely stunning. This has gone through many iterations. There's been like many remakes of the cover of this book. But I think the US cover is of note here. You know, that's the one where Alex and Poppy are in lawn chairs, sort of like opposite each other, and Alex has the book in his hand. And the reason why this is important is because there is a movie recreation of this shot, and it looks really good from some of the pictures I've seen. So I just wanted to mention that in tying in with how the movie adaptation will be. Let's get into our tropes and microtropes. First of all, friends to lovers, slow burn, opposites attract, second chance, ish, romance. If we are going with microtropes, one bed. There is also a caretaking when sick scene, and that is a microtrope that I absolutely love and will forever love until the day I die. So that is our tropes and microtropes. Let's get into who's who. Poppy is our lighthearted, free-spirited travel writer, FMC, or female main character, with an uncanny fear of people rejecting her eclectic but super cool family. Therefore, a fear of being rejected herself. Alex is our quiet, introverted best friend to Poppy. He is our MMC, or our main male character. He's super reliable, he is responsible, he's a good brother, he's a great friend. Rachel is a style blogger, French bulldog enthusiast, born and bred Upper West Sider, and also Poppy's BFF, whose mom is a therapist and also is Poppy's therapist. There is Sarah, who is Alex's on-again, off-again, ex-girlfriend, situationship, girlfriend, etc. And then more prominently, because Poppy has a few people that she dates throughout the book, but I think Trey is most of note to mention. There's Julian, there's Guillermo, and then there is Trey, who is all of those people are Poppy's ex, but Trey in particular is the resident photographer for R&R. Okay, let's jump into this week's Fem Frame, where we dive into key feminist themes, history, cultural context, and more. So out of all of Emily Henry's main characters, female main characters, I think I resonate the most with Poppy. Throughout the book, Poppy is what I would call a woman who wants more. If you've ever read Untamed by Glennon Doyle, this is what she would call Tabitha, the cheetah, or something wild and innate within us that recognizes that we have been caged. And this idea of women contorting themselves and telling themselves that they shouldn't want more is something that I am intricately connected with in my professional career, and something that on a personal note means a lot to me. It's why I choose to focus on it professionally. Poppy is someone who tries to make the most of everything. She is someone who chases adventure and flirts with life. She seemingly has it all, and yet she still wants more. Now, I don't think this is because she has chased the wrong dreams. I just think that women like Poppy, or like me, or possibly like you, are constantly challenging the status quo and refuse to settle for something that is mediocre when the possibility of more exists out there somewhere, and we can see it and we know that it's out there. And I'm not saying this because I want you as a woman or a femme-leaning folk listening to this podcast to feel that contentment is this impossible status to achieve, because I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true at all. I just think that being content eventually turns into boredom, and I think that boredom breeds discontentment and starts a new cycle of change and personal growth. Now, I'm somebody who does tarot professionally, and even in tarot, this is how the trajectory of the cards go. And in tarot, there are 4 suits, and each suit is broken down into numbered cards. It goes from ace to 10, and then from there it goes on to what we would call, the royalty cards: page, knight, queen, and king. But those 4 cards aside, the ace through 10 is a journey of starting something new at ace, something really wrapping up around 10. There is something that is being done in the cycle. And that whole cycle, 1 to 10, brings us through this trajectory in the life experience of being excited to start something new and being at the precipice of something that is exciting and fresh and somewhere where we can be novice to having completed what we were supposed to complete in that part of the cycle and feeling the beyond contentment, which is, I've been content with this thing for too long. Now it's time for something new. And that doesn't mean that the contentment piece isn't there. It doesn't mean that we as women or as femme-leaning folk can't find contentment, because contentment is a part of the process. It just means that women like Poppy and women like me and maybe like you don't like to just sit in the contentment. The contentment breeds that experience of, where is the ace? Where is the new beginning? Where do I get to go and be novice at something? Where do I get to push who I thought I was and break out of the finite spell that contentment is the solitary goal? There are waves and cycles of contentment through our lifetime, and that doesn't mean that you're either content or discontent either. It means that there's parts of this process that you're willing and ready and able to break out of, because contentment often is correlated to a status quo. And people like Poppy and people like me see the status quo and enjoy it for what it is, for the moment that it is, and then also say, what's next? Or what could be next? What would I dream if I let myself be more than just this version of content? And I think that somebody like Poppy is an embodiment in this book of somebody who is afraid to perhaps reach for more. And I think this is important because it's the foundation of today's femme frame. Poppy even goes on to say in the book, she says, deep down, I am completely heartbroken. It hurts to want it all. So many things that can't coexist within the same life. Why does this matter? Number one, cultural conditioning versus authenticity. Many women feel the societal pressure to have it all or be perpetually content. But the true fulfillment often lies in our personal growth, our self-awareness, owning our desires. Number two, balance and self-expansion. Seeking balance and embracing self-expansion through challenges, meaningful goals, and authentic expression leads to a deeper sense of satisfaction. And number three, our agency and our voice. Shifting away from seeking validation from other people and what they think our version of contentment should be, into listening to your own inner desires empowers women to reshape their lives based on their own terms. And of course, this is what I coach women to do in my professional life, and it was so rich to see this on page and recognize Poppy as a reflection point of my own personal growth and my own growth journey for myself, which I think is one of the amazing things that pop culture and books and movies and TV should be doing for us, is acting as a reflection point for us to have growth and expansion in our personal lives. So I really wanted to dive into this idea of Poppy as this conventional millennial women, who want more. And to me, if I look back historically, women have been conditioned to want less. This is why also historically women have had to pursue their desire for more. Otherwise, if we were always ever just content with the status quo, we would still be getting sold for a dowry. We would be getting married at 12 years old and popping out 1,000 children. With absolutely no rights, we would have absolutely no autonomy, and we would have absolutely no say over the matter. So I went searching on the internet, as one does, to look up this idea of wanting more in correlation to women, the idea of the woman who wants it all. And I found a whole lot of articles that discuss why women shouldn't want more. Most of those articles were very subtle in the way that they ask women to compromise. Because many of those articles, the main theme is don't want more, be content with what you have. And this is why many women settle. And this is why many, especially millennial women, are waking up to this idea that we don't have to settle. We do not have to settle for partners that are not what we are looking for, especially because they're not providing us anything that we can't provide for ourselves. We don't need to settle in jobs that demand too much of us when our male counterparts are not having the same expectations. We do not need to settle for home lives, for professional lives, for personal lives. Like, we don't need to settle. And I think a lot of millennial women are really flipping the script about this in our generation, about what it is to be a woman who wants more, and to actually not be sold on this idea of just being content with what we have, because that's what keeps women docile. That is this drug that is keeping women lucid, this idea that when you want more, you're being ungrateful, or when you want more, you're asking for too much. And this is why these articles are very, very subtle, that we should just be content with what we have. And to that, I say, fuck that. Fuck that. I know not everyone will love Poppy, and that's okay. But if you're here listening to this podcast, I assume it's because we are kindred spirits in some way or another. And I know that I am a woman who wants it all. I am a woman who desires to have it all. And maybe you are too. So don't settle because you think or are being told that you can't have what you desire. And don't let these stupid articles that are out there in the world, or this propaganda around femininity and what it is to be a woman and what it is to be content in womanhood as we grow and evolve in our, expansion of what we are considering femininity and what we desire as a collective or individually. No articles, no people should tell us otherwise. If women did not fight and were just content with what they were, we would not have the right to vote. We would not see half of the stuff that has happened in this country. The progress that has happened in this country, in particular in America, where I am right now, has come from the discontentment of women, or women breaking out of the idea that being content with what they're being told is totally fine. So it is okay to desire more. Desiring more progresses a story, even if it's just yours in a personal note. And I don't mean to say even as if that is facetious. If it progresses your story on a personal note in a way that is profound for you, like, congratulations. This is why Poppy is such an important figure, and why I love this book and this story and her so much. Now, I did find one article. It was an incredible article on Medium written by Caitlin Aber, and it is titled Why Women Shouldn't Feel Guilty for Always Wanting More. These are articles women like me, you, and freaking Poppy Wright need in our goddamn lives. In one paragraph, Caitlin says, as someone who is married and has a home, an office job, and a myriad of adult responsibilities, and also someone who wants to set it all on fire and run away half of the time, I look at someone like Steinem and I feel intense jealousy. I think a lot of women do. Because even now, over 50 years after Steinem spent her 20s traipsing around Europe and India, so many women in their 20s and 30s, including this woman right here, are still caught between living the lives we think we should want and the lives we actually desire. And it's still so fucking hard to reconcile the two, even with everything that has changed for our gender since the 50s. Caitlin's entire article was beautiful, eloquent, loquacious, and I'll tag it in the show notes so that you can go and read it in full if you desire to. But I'll share her conclusion. Caitlin says, wanting more is very feminist, and finding out what your more is and getting it is a victory for all of us. So go out there and get it. I dare you. If you're listening to this right now, I encourage you to look at where you personally yearn for more. And when I say more, I don't specifically mean a thing that you should desire. Take Poppy, for example, who on paper has the perfect career but dreams of writing her blog again, because making content for Travelers on a Budget and Traveling with Alex was more valuable to her because she was connecting with and meeting different people and connecting with Alex in a way that was fulfilling for her. And so even though she gets this incredible job at R&R where she is traveling and taking high-end vacations, it's not fulfilling to her the way that thing was. And it takes some digging for her to understand that her more isn't necessarily scaling the ladder to do the more thing, which would be the job at R&R and keeping her job at R&R in order to say that she's got a specific status symbol. It's about recognizing her internal desire and pursuing that and shaping it. By the end of the book, when she shapes it for the people we meet in New York, that she's shaping it for what she desires and what's going to fit her in that moment, and recognizing that as we go through the life journey, what fulfills us today might not fulfill us tomorrow, and that we need to acknowledge that so that we can shape our reality based off of our desires in those moments. Contentment grows into discontentment at periods of time. That's why R&R was fulfilling for her for a period until it wasn't. And she gives herself permission to desire the more thing in that moment, which is to say, I'm pivoting in a direction that most people would consider less in their career, but is actually more fulfilling for me. When she decides to leave, that is her version of more. More doesn't mean that you have to want the thing that everyone says you should want or that you should pursue. It is simply acknowledging your inner desire and pursuing it no matter what it is. All right, that's our pep talk and our fem frame for today. Let's go through our quickie. This is a quickie episode, so we will start with the timeline of Poppy and Alex's friendship. 12 years ago, Poppy spots Alex at their college orientation and befriends him because he is also standing alone. They immediately discover that they are from the same town in Ohio, and then that's basically all they have in common. 11 years ago, after seeing him on campus but really never speaking to him, Poppy and Alex carpool home together to Linfield from their school in Chicago. This car ride solidifies their friendship as Poppy, who is ever curious about people, decides to be curious about Alex and dive into him and discover him. And this leads to a summer of growing friendship back home in Linfield, Ohio. 10 years ago, the two take their first annual summer vacation to Vancouver Island. 9 years ago, they head off to Nashville. It's the first time that Poppy admits to herself that she would like to kiss Alex. 8 years ago, they jet off to San Francisco. They get very drunk. They pretend to be newlyweds, and then they slightly melt down over Poppy's boyfriend, Julian. 7 years ago, the two head to New Orleans and have a very on-theme vacation. 6 years ago, Poppy and Alex head to a free stay at a hotel in Vail, Colorado that is gifted to them because of Poppy's blog. 5 years ago, they head to Sanibel Island. It's the first time that Poppy really lets herself have the thought, I am in love with you, when she looks at Alex. 4 years ago, Poppy gets sick and Alex flies to see her in New York City instead of taking their planned trip to Sweden and Norway. 3 years ago, they take a couple's trip to Tuscany. Poppy brings her boyfriend, Trey. Alex brings his on-again, off-again girlfriend, Sarah. And Poppy turns out to think that she is pregnant, but the tests come back negative. 2 years ago, the two go on an RR paid trip to Croatia, and they share their first, albeit very drunken kiss. In trying to navigate their relationship after, the two fumble and they go radio silent, basically for 2 years. Then there is a break, and then we get to this summer. Okay, there is no 1 year ago, there is just this summer, and it takes us through the trajectory of their journey in the present. There are also a few major themes that I am going to cover, and the most prominent one is you just need therapy, babe. Poppy and Alex are two of my favorite characters, perhaps ever. I love this book so much. I loved it the first time I read it. I loved it the second time I read it. I am looking forward to reading it a third time again this year. I am looking forward to reading it maybe annually. It is definitively one of my top comfort reads. I love this book so much. Despite loving Poppy and Alex as much as I do, both characters have a lot of fear. And this fear directly dictates their lives, and it causes both of them to continuously self-sabotage when it comes to their romance. For Poppy, she avoids being vulnerable by keeping things fun and light. Poppy uses humor and chaos and banter to dodge her emotional depth, which ends up spewing out anyway because underneath all of the jokes, Poppy cries a ton throughout this book, and I resonate with that because I am an immediate crier, happy, sad, angry, frustrated, doesn't matter. Whatever the strong emotion is, I'm pretty much defaulting to tears. So the fact that she constantly makes these jokes and then immediately starts crying is so Julia coded that I look at Poppy and I'm just like, I get you. I totally get her. And by the way, in different ways, I completely and totally understand Alex. That's why they're one of my favorite couples. So she's consistently dodging her emotional depth, especially when things with Alex start to feel serious. Like in these moments where they start to get super vulnerable or maybe a little bit intense, she just likes to keep the vibe light. She makes a joke so that she doesn't have to risk being rejected by him, essentially. Poppy has a very serious case of otherness, something that I think also a lot of women and queer folk and femme folk in general struggle with. And this otherness, this sense of being different and alternative to everyone around you, leads to an extreme case of loneliness, both in real life and particularly in this case for Poppy. She was relentlessly bullied in school. And even in her family, this place where she certainly has a lot of love and support, she still feels that she's the odd one out. She says to Alex, like, everyone in my family is paired up. It's my mom and my dad. It's Parker and Prince, they're together. Like, even my pets have someone to pair off with. And even though I love all of them and I know that they love me, like, I'm still othered here. I'm still different. I don't have anyone to pair up with. Combating her otherness and her loneliness is what leads for her to have this deep-seated fear of rejection. And even though there is this piece of her that is truly an adventurous spirit, that is true to the nature of who Poppy is, there is something free and untethered and wild about her. But there is also something in that gets amplified in her by trying to combat this loneliness and by trying to find somewhere that she belongs. It's not really a fear of commitment, because throughout the book, we see her committing to things. But also throughout the book, it seems that there is just a discontentment because she is never fully letting herself be seen. At one point in the book, when Poppy is dating Julian, Alex says, "I can tell he doesn't get you." And shortly thereafter, Julian comes up again during that trip in San Francisco, and Poppy starts crying. She says she's going to die alone, and then immediately is like, wow, I didn't even know I felt this way. Alex is just so safe for her. He is such a safe harbor for her that she can start to determine her own fear and insecurity around him. So 2 years into their friendship, she tells him that she's been bullied. She tells him that she's had all of these experiences of being rejected for who she is. And, you know, Alex goes on to basically say, like, I thought none of this was real. Like, the shocking clothes, the shocking jokes. And Poppy's like, whatever do you mean? Because there is a piece of her that is eclectic and weird and different. And then there is a piece of that gets really amplified by her fear of rejection. And so when she tells all of this to Alex, when she is saying, I felt that I don't belong to anybody, and she's going through this whole spiel, in her internal dialogue, she says, I feel that I belong to Alex, though. And then she immediately follows that up with, that's weird to say to somebody who you've only been friends with for a short period of time. They haven't been friends long by the time she admits that to him. So she doesn't say, well, I feel like I belong with you, because she recognizes in the moment, like, maybe that's weird to say to somebody. And it's not, because Alex is already in love with her at this point, but they're navigating this in such a space of fear that she doesn't let herself say it and risk the idea that he says that's weird or, it's too soon or whatever. And it leads to this like compounding of every time that she gets into this space with Alex, not feeling like she can be fully honest about who he is to her and how she feels around him. So even a year later, after that trip in San Francisco, she's dating somebody and she still feels incredibly lonely. And Alex is like, you don't want to marry that guy. And she starts crying. She starts crying because she feels that she will never be fully seen by anybody but Alex, and she doesn't know how to let herself want him. This idea of loneliness comes up consistently for Poppy. It's what drives her essentially to love travel so much. And again, this is something that is in her, but it's amplified through this idea of her loneliness. So at one point in the book, she says, as a kid, I was a loner, and I always figured that when I grew up, I'd leave my hometown and discover other people like me somewhere else, which I have, But everyone gets lonely sometimes. And whenever that happens, I buy a plane ticket and go to the airport, and I don't know. I don't feel lonely anymore, because no matter what makes all those people different, they're just trying to get somewhere, waiting to reach someone. A huge part of her journey in this book is recognizing that the rejection that she fears is to be accepted as her full self, because she is different. She is eclectic. She is full of life. And Alex sees this in her, and he accepts it in her, and he loves her wholeheartedly for it. So it's not shocking that shortly after this admission, she says to Alex, they're sitting in the car and they're having this conversation about loneliness. And she says, I've never really felt alone since I met you. I don't think I'll ever truly feel alone again as long as you're in it. Meaning, as long as you're in my world, as long as you're around, I don't think I'll ever feel that way again. And every time she brushes up against that 5 to 15% of her that recognizes that she's blatantly in love with Alex, she brushes it off with a joke to deflect what she's actually experiencing. So when they get to this kiss in Croatia, she thinks he's rejecting her. She thinks he is rejecting her, and this fear for her is so deep-seated that she just brushes it off. She's like, it's fine, we're friends. Even though internally she doesn't feel this way. She wants to be with him. She wants to experience what it is to let herself fully desire him. But the other 95% of her that would rather have Alex at all in any capacity than risk her heart and be rejected by him and have none of him wins out, and it consistently wins out for her. So when they have this kiss and he's like, we shouldn't have done this while we were drunk, which for him is saying, hey, I've been thinking about this for a long time and I want to do it correctly. She doesn't hear any of that because she doesn't know how he feels about her. So she thinks that he's rejecting her and saying, we shouldn't have done this because we're friends. And so she's like, it was just one drunken kiss between friends, and it's what deteriorates their relationship because they don't know how to supply for the other person to pull them out of their own fear. She doesn't even know that Alex is feeling afraid. And alternatively, Alex doesn't know that Poppy is afraid, after this experience. And Alex is different because according to his therapist, he is afraid to be happy. But to me, Alex's journey seems so rooted in surrendering stability and guarantees. Alex is somebody who likes things to be predictable, and I think that Poppy being unpredictable and wild is enticing to him. And that's sometimes why they work, and it's sometimes why they don't. And I resonate so deeply with Poppy and Alex in completely different ways. This is an older sibling. He strives to be good. He strives to be consistent for his family. He wants to help everybody out. And, I resonate with that as an older sister myself. Control for Alex is maintaining a semblance of normalcy, especially after he lost his mother and having to deal with how his father processes and handles that. So he works really, really hard to put his brother through school. He chooses a safe partner in Sarah. He stays in Linfield. He teaches where he's comfortable. And even describes his relationship with her to Poppy. He says, I loved her in this way that feels so clear and easy to understand and manageable. And of course, that doesn't mean he doesn't love her. She wants on paper all the same things. She wants to be a teacher and live in Linfield and have children. All of these things that Poppy is afraid are not enough, like that she'll never be able to supply to Alex. And Alex is afraid that in asking Poppy to, pursue a lifestyle like that, that she's giving up an essential part of her, and he doesn't want her to do that either. So, loving Sarah in this way that is clear and easy to understand and manageable fits right in with who Alex is. He's a planner. He is an older sibling who is managing the family, right? He likes stability. He likes consistency. He likes things the way that they are. He gets up and goes to the gym at the same time every day. He runs, he's active. He has a routine and he sticks to it. And Poppy is not that. He has a very different lifestyle. He has a pet. He takes care of it. And at the end of the book, Poppy's like, look, here's a plant. It's an easy plant, but it is a plant that I've kept alive since we've gotten back from Palm Springs. What do you think? Do you think that I am somebody that you could see yourself having this life of stability with? Am I enough for you? And, he basically is like, I could get on a plane and go with you to New York and be happy with you because we can find the balance between these two things. So I love their relationship for many ways, but Alex as a planner, as the person who wants to stay in his hometown and stay close to his family and be around his nieces and nephews and his father and, fix up his grandmother's house, that is a key and fundamental piece of who he is. And it works so well in the book because anytime that they are in a situation, Poppy defaults to Alex to make the plan. So when they are in need of spontaneity or they are in need of going beyond their, comfort zone, Poppy is the one that can push the boundaries of that. But when she sprains her ankle, Alex makes a plan. He goes, here's what's going to happen. When she thinks she's pregnant, Alex is like, okay, here's the plan. Here's what's going to happen. When the tire goes flat in Palm Springs, she's like, what do we do? And he goes, here's the plan. And then Poppy goes, and we followed this plan, right? Like, he's like, we're going to call a tow truck. We are going to get back to the hotel. We are going to deal with this tomorrow. She's like, and then we waited for the tow truck, and the tow truck came. And this is like what we did. So they followed these plans that he makes. He's a really good person to take charge in those kind of situations. He's a great planner. And this is where him and Poppy actually have some nice overlap, that their opposites attract isn't them being so different that they can't be together on paper. It's that recognizing that they have different skills and assets that are good for each other. With somebody like Poppy, it's never going to get boring. It's never going to get stale. It's never going to be, we're 30 years into our marriage and things look just the same. But with Alex, it's never going to be so unrooted that they can't have all of the things that they want. They can have the family, they can have the home, they can have travel, they can have whatever it is that they want, they like, they desire, as long as they're both willing to pursue it and not be afraid to choose the things that are actually going to light them up and allow the other person that they love and care about to see it and support them in it, because they are incredible support systems for each other. They love each other so deeply and so profoundly as friends and as partners when they get there in the book, in a way that is so rich that you know that by having somebody who is rooted and focused on stability and somebody who is untethered and focused on vitality and fullness, that they are actually getting it all by having each other. So this fear that is a huge theme that treks throughout the book is that they are both very afraid to be in love with a person who is very different from them. And Poppy is afraid of being somebody who wants too much, and not even just wanting to be too much, but who is perceiving herself to be too much. I am too much for Alex to possibly want. Alex wants to settle down and have kids and live in Linfield and do all of these things that I'm not even sure I want. I'm too much for him. And Alex is afraid of not being enough for her. He breaks up with Sarah and they go on this vacation and he's like, God, I hope I'm not boring Poppy. I hope I'm not boring for her. At the end of the book, Alex is like, I'm not going to be the person to ask you to give up all of the things that you want. Like, I'm not going to do that just because we don't make sense on paper. So, she's afraid of being too much for him and he's afraid of not being enough for her. And any single time that either of them talk about their feelings for each other as the book goes on, this concept of fear is intricately woven in. This deep-rooted fear of coping with their unworthiness is a major theme throughout this book. So here are some quotes that go deeper into this. I would rather have one tiny sliver of him forever than have all of him for just a moment and know I'd have to relinquish all of it when we were through. I could never lose Alex. I couldn't. Alex wants marriage and kids and a home in one place. He wants it all with somebody like Sarah, someone who can help him build a life that he lost when he was 6 years old. And I want a tetherless life of spontaneous trips and exciting new relationships in different seasons with different people. Quite possibly never to settle down. Our only hope of maintaining this relationship is through the platonic friendship we've always had. Alex says, I don't know how to love someone as much as I love you. It's terrifying. There's nothing scarier than the chance that once you really have all of me, that changes. But I want all all of you, so I'm trying to be brave. That's Poppy when she's admitting her feelings for him. Alex says, I do regret every chance I missed to tell you how I felt. All the times I convinced myself I'd lose you if you really knew, or that we were just too different. I just want to be happy with you, but I'm afraid of what comes after. I'm afraid of you realizing I bore you, or meeting someone else, or being unhappy and staying. I'm afraid of loving you for our entire lives and then having to say goodbye. I'm just scared. And Poppy, he goes on to have this whole monologue. He's afraid that she'll die and he'll never be able to get out of bed. And then there's this one last quote where Alex finishes this whole spiel about all of the things that he's afraid of in their relationship. And he says, I'm just scared. And Poppy says, then we've found something else we agree on besides hating it when people call boats she. It's fucking terrifying to be in love with each other. And that's only a few examples of how fear and being terrified of their feelings for each other is mentioned throughout the book. Now, there is one other theme that I think is important, and it's this search of belonging or this search of home. So Poppy's emotional arc is about realizing that home isn't a place, it's a person. All right, there's one last theme that I think is important to note, and that is this idea of searching for home or searching for belonging. So Poppy's emotional arc is realizing that home isn't a place, it's a person. She has been everywhere. She's been all over the world, and she still feels unmoored. The only place that she feels tied and tethered is when she is with Alex. Even her dream job at R, it feels hollow to her. And Alex represents this stable emotional center that she didn't know that she craved. So her breakthrough is when she finally admits that she's not happy and that her dream is partly in New York, partly with connecting with other people, but also that there is a larger part of this crisis of identity, this crisis of career that she has that comes from this sense of belonging, and that she is willing to sacrifice and risk, going to this place that she was emotionally tortured, bullied, to prove to Alex that he's more important to her, that he is her home. And, she says, I think I am that for you too. And this idea of them belonging together and finding a home within each other, I think is a key and central part of this book as well. There is also this idea of escapism versus belonging, right? Like, who am I running away from? I'm running away from Linfield as Poppy for my entire life, only to run into my childhood bully in New York City and feel hollow still that I've done something, I got out, I made something of myself, and he feels bad about what happened, and knowing this doesn't change anything for me. So she recognizes that there is no escaping this sense of what she's gone through, that there is nothing to prove, that the only thing that she has to do is actually align to what is important to her and make sense for her. All right, this is a segment that I've never been able to do yet, but it is called It's Up to You as Nancy Drew, which is for a very specific group of girls. So we will call this also the Super Sleuth section, which is that at one point, Alex reads an Augustus Everett book by the pool. It does not say which one, but it does mention Augustus Everett, and I am excited to talk about how Gus and January consistently come up throughout the Emily Henry verse as we make our way through it. All right, Dear Diary. This is where I will share some personal anecdotes or stories as we go through, even though I know I do that throughout the whole podcast. But this story in particular came out right around the time when I was going through one of the worst valleys in my life. I was going through an insane breakup. I had decided to stop drinking at this point in time, and I was moving out of state, not for the first time, but in a really poignant way for my life journey. And I bought this book, and I brought it with me on a trip to Philadelphia to go visit my best friend ahead of my move. We are very different creatures of habit. Okay, she is a night owl, my best friend, and I am an early bird. So I read this book in one weekend, in 2 days, on her couch, in the glow of the hot morning Philadelphia sun, with a coffee in my hand while I was waiting for her to wake up and we could start our adventures for the day. And when I ended my relationship, which was the thing that sparked me to, I was already planning on moving, but it was the thing that sparked me to stop drinking. So as I was going through this sort of shift in identity, shift in my understanding of self and my persona. One of the things that was such a consistent source of tension for me and my partner at the time was this idea of me being extra or too much or too sensitive. And I had a very repressed partner. I spent years contorting myself to be as small and as numb as possible, which is why drinking became such a huge part of my personal culture. And it's a part of Western culture, I think, in like a really abhorrent way, but that's a conversation for another day. It was something that I recognized was keeping me numb when I really needed to be being my full self and feeling all of the things that I was feeling, not just as I was going through this breakup, but in general, as somebody who is described as high on life. Like, I just went out with two of my girlfriends and they are like, you don't even need to drink, you're like drunk on life. That's how I want to be as I move through the world. I want life to be so fulfilling to me that I don't need anything to numb me out to it. So when I read this and I saw Poppy and Alex's relationship, I felt for the first time like my insides woke up after years of repression and stuffing things down and numbing things out. And I had this internal thought that was like, that's how it's supposed to look. You're supposed to be all of the big, beautiful, eccentric things that you are, Jules. And somebody is supposed to love you for it. Somebody's supposed to see it and not reject it. And it made me come to terms with my own fear of rejection. And it rooted me into one of my new life philosophies at that time, which I've now had for a couple of years, which is like, never be the one to say no to yourself. And I started to dream bigger and dream bolder at that moment in time. And it was such a turning point for me. So this book not only has my favorite characters because I deeply resonate and understand both Poppy in all of her eccentric, different otherness, and Alex for all of his stable, older brother vibes, but because it came to me at a time when I decided to stop playing small and actually go for the life that I wanted. And I will always be grateful for this book. And I was afraid to reread it because I was afraid that what it meant to me the first time around would maybe be diminished in rereading it, and discovered that I loved it even more because I could see how far I've come in my journey and how much farther I'm excited to go and what that will look like as I move through my own life journey. So I'm so grateful for this book, and I'm so grateful for this journey through Emily Henry's series as we go through. All right. Let's crack open the burn book where we look at our superlatives for this episode. The Bold and Bothered Award. Poppy selling Guillermo's knife and saying, frankly, I wanted the knife to haunt him. Not in a, my ex is going to go all Glenn Close in Fatal Attraction way, but in a, something about this missing knife seems to be conjuring a strong metaphor and I can't figure out what it is saying way. I love that because I am this type of petty. This is the type of petty that I am, just so everyone knows, putting that out there for the public. The Shiro Award. I know this is going to be random, but I actually think that the Shiro Award goes to Poppy's organic condom-buying mother, who taught Poppy such beautiful forms of self-love and self-care and to be open and to be herself. So there's this quote where she says, my mom used to write little notes on my bathroom mirror in dry erase marker. Good morning to that beautiful smile. Hello, strong arms and legs. Have a great day, lovely belly that feeds my darling daughter. I just love that. The Femme Fatale Award. Shout out to the best boss ever, sorry to Michael Scott. But this one goes to Swapna. When Poppy needs to call out, she sends this incredibly apologetic email to Swapna about the trip. And Swapna writes her back and says, and Poppy, when this happens again, which it will, do not go in so hard on the apology. You are not the master of your immune system, and I can assure you that when your male colleagues have to cancel a trip, they show no indication that they feel they have personally wronged me. Don't encourage people to blame you for something beyond your control. You are a fantastic writer, and we are lucky to have you. Speak your truth trophy. 10 years of friendship flushed down the drain just so I could know what Alex Nilsson tastes like. By far my favorite quote. Honorary heartthrob. There are many in this book, but I will say that when Alex says to Poppy, I have what I want, Poppy. Chef's kiss. Brilliant. There is nothing else of note there because it is a perfect line. And when he says this, I just know Alex is at the top of my list when it comes to Emily Henry men. I'm saying it now because I know it's true. We're going to do a You've Got Mailbag on Emily Henry stuff. So if you have thoughts, feelings, opinions about Emily Henry stuff, at the end of this series, we're going to do a You've Got Mailbag. So you should send all of those in. All right. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Femme and Furious. If you liked this episode, share it out with your friends. Leave a review, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I will be back on Friday talking about The Bear. It will be another quickie. We will go episode by episode, just the highlights, similar to the season 1 recap of The Last of Us. If you listen to that episode, that is what we will do for The Bear. So don't go into that episode until you've seen all the episodes. And until then, go out there and be anyone that you want, just like you're on vacation. Bye for now.